Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where today we're going to be talking about the Maestros. And of course, in this particular story, we're covering Anhelo, who is basically the right-hand man to Xander, and one of the strongest of the Maestro vampire assassins. And we see him, it starts off with him, basically, he drives up to this place, and he's telling his daughter, Errant, he's like, hey, I'm going to go in here, it's going to be like 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, I'll be out. And she's like, look, you keep doing stuff like that, and it's always like it's always something that makes you late, it's always something that makes you miss it. She goes, last time you said it like, she says, it's gonna be like when you missed my party because of that Severo guy. And he's like, no, it's not gonna be like that, it's gonna be 5 minutes. 5 minutes and that's it. So he goes in there into the building, and he knows it's 5 minutes to make his case, get the information, and get back to his car. And he meets Toulouse. Now, Toulouse is an Obscura agent. She's known as the Conductor. And it makes no sense for her character to be called the Conductor. Like, she's like a literal subway conductor. When here, she is so much more interesting. Like, she has so much more to her character than just being a person that runs the trains. I can see why the clever conductor would be like someone of power, since it's making sure like the infrastructure keeps moving. But it feels kind of out of place, especially since she's in an office and she has a shadow generator that just makes it to where it's automatically dark around her. She's called lights out loose, because she's like, essentially she makes people disappear, knocks them out, they're gone, no longer a problem, that kind of thing. Well, he's here and he's talking to her, and the whole deal is that Toulouse's daughter and Angelo's daughter are getting married tomorrow, the next day. And Angelo's looking for information. He's like, look, I need this, I need this, I need this. And she's like, look, if you want that stuff, if you were family, you'd have it free of charge. And he's like, well, we aren't family yet. And he had said that earlier, and now he's like kind of regretting that. And so they decide, okay, fine, I'll do it, whatever you need me to do. What is it? And she says, I need you to kill a guy for me. Fierro Vespin. Fierro Vespin is the most garish and gauche of the Maestros. He's a really bad art dealer, and he's a generally unpleasant fellow. And he's like been known to like mess with people that he really shouldn't. And it's surprising that he's not dead already. And so she tells him, kill this guy tomorrow. And he's like, on the wedding? She's like, obviously. He needs to be dead by tomorrow, or no deal. And so Anhelo agrees, and he's like, okay, that's what I gotta do. He leaves and he goes off on his own deal. And the main thing about him is that he's an artist. And like any artist, he wants to make sure that it's perfect. He wants it to look extravagant, beautiful. And as an assassin, that is his art. So it's just like if you were to build a magic deck and your focus is not so much on the winning with the deck as it is having style with your deck. So for instance, you are making an all planeswalker deck with no creatures in it, and there's a creature that comes out that works really well with planeswalkers. You have to decide, is the artistry worth it? Is the loss of this particular thing, or a character in the storyline suddenly becomes a Phyrexian planeswalker, and now you have to remove them from your heroes deck because they're not a hero anymore. Stuff like that. Those little nitpicks that are completely illogical and have no reason to actually be there, but artistically, you want it to look perfectly. It's the same kind of deal here, where he knows that he could just go and kill the guy and just stab him to death if he wanted to, but that wouldn't quite get what he wants out of it. It wouldn't be the work of art it needs to be. And so he decides that he needs someone's help to do it. He goes to Evelyn. Evelyn, of course, being one of the most powerful nightmares in the Maestro, actually the only nightmare in the Maestro ranks. She's an extremely powerful and terrifying vampire. Also, the reason she's the only nightmare is because she had Anhelo help her by offing the previous other vampire that was considered a nightmare. And she says that for a price, she will essentially work with him. What's interesting here is that because of the fact that she does this, there are going to be repercussions in the next set that revisits Capenna because of this moment of her saying, you now owe me. Because her basically her debts that she draws out of people, she'll get them at the worst possible time. And I have a pretty strong idea of how that's going to come into play, thanks to the way the story shakes out. That said, we see this moment where Anhelo shows up with Fierro. And Fierro's just everyone knows a Fierro. Everyone knows the guy who acts very, very friendly, but is also super conniving and super selfish. And he's like, my old friend, what an honor. I had no idea you'd be giving the tour. Isn't it your daughter's wedding day? And he goes, yeah, it is. Taking time out of your day to help a jamoke like me. I tell you, nobody in the family likes you, buddy. Nobody looking out for the little guy anymore. And he's like, this guy smells terrible, but thank you so much for your kind words. Okay, let's just go. That's your job, ain't it? And he's like got his arm around him and he's like, my best friend. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy. And obviously this whole time, it's like a Cask of Amontillado kind of deal where this guy has no idea what is about to come to him. And he just keeps following him and going further and deeper into this trap, looking at the museum, and there's all these different things. And he's smoking a giant halo stick. And he's just blowing it all over this oil painting, and it's ruining things. And Angelo's like, he doesn't like the guy in the first place. He knows it'll be fine if the guy winds up dead. No one's gonna care. And like I said before, we had these other three characters in the previous stories that are all like vaguely good. Anhelo is an assassin. He's plotting to kill a guy. It's not the same as these other three people who were trying to like help others and figure things out. Anhelo is an inherently selfish character. He's going through this because he wants information. He's doing it during his daughter's wedding. It's an inconvenience to him, and he just wants to get to it. There's nothing here that's really redeeming about his character, other than the fact that he's very creative. And so they're going through and they're talking about old Capenna and the artwork and all of the stuff. And he's saying, hey, there's all like, they get to this room, and the room is full of these ancient artifacts, and it's really, really cool. All the stuff in here, right? And Fierro sees something special, a statue that is twice as tall as Anhelo and twice as wide as Fierro, and is an old Capennan warrior's blade arm. And it's a storm of sharp edges, a symphony of metal. And he has no idea where Evelyn found it. But he knew that if he could get Fierro to stand in a very specific spot, that the axe that the guy was holding, it would fall just right, and it would sever Fierro's head just as the light came through a stained glass window to illuminate him, and it would be beautiful. And of course, it kind of works very slowly towards it, but he does get him exactly where he needs him, and he hits him. The arc goes perfect. The body falls down. He's able to do it exactly how he wanted to. I mean, if you look at the artwork of Angelo's artwork, it's just all that. It's him. He's made a work of art out of a murder scene, essentially, and he's very proud of himself. You can tell. And so, after all of that, he knows that he's got half an hour to make it across town. There's no way that he could get there walking, but he can't drive himself because that would be gauche, and he is too fancy of a man to do that. And so he knows that he could have killed Fierro the night before and had all the time he could have, but he also knew that he wouldn't be able to do, he could not physically bring himself to do it. Similarly, he could not physically bring himself to get into any car and then drive to the wedding. No, he had to go in style. And so he sees a cab, a very impressive looking one. And it meant that he couldn't take a trusted cab, essentially. And so he goes and he finds it. And it's not a bad looking one either. It's like a really nice looking one. And he realizes that this is not right. There's something off about it. And the guy that's driving says, Grand Capenna Hall, big day for you, isn't it, Mr. Anhelo? He's like, yeah, real big. And look, I don't care who you are. Today of all days, if you give me where I need to go, I'll give you whatever you like. And so he keeps going. And the guy is definitely not working with him. And he's going down an alleyway, and he's not getting where he needs to go. And he goes, You can't give me what I want. And Anhelo begins to realize, look, you like literally whatever you want, I can give it to you. Anything. And he goes, look, oh, it's starting to fall in place for you. This face of mine, you've seen it before. And he goes, look, I don't know who you are. Today's my daughter's. And he goes, yes, I know it's your wedding. I know everything about you. That's how I tricked you so easily. This car, this suit, I wasn't sure it would work, but you vampires are also easy to read. Your addiction to luxury is pathetic. And it's like stolen car, stolen suit. This guy's not even Antonio. And he goes, no, it's not. It's Severo. The guy that was mentioned at the very beginning of the story. 3 years ago, you killed my father on my birthday. And he goes, congratulations on the big day. Hope your daughter hurts like I did. And so Anhelo like lunges for him across the divider that's there, and he's able to stab Severo in the chest, but is not fast enough to stop him from running into essentially a riveter transport, like into a truck essentially. And basically everything is terrible. There's a wreck, and there was stuff tinkling in the back, and he doesn't know what's going on. He gets out of the wreckage. He's really confused, and then he sees that there's a bunch of riveteers, and they had their halo stolen. For some reason, riveters are really bad at holding onto their halo. And the riveters say, oh, look, that maestro, he's got our merchandise. And he's like, oh, no. And now he's getting savagely beat. And as a vampire, obviously he has better endurance than most, but he's got basically nothing. He goes and he tries to stab a guy, and another guy already hits him over the head with rebar. He's done. And he's trying to maintain his strength because obviously his daughter made him promise that he was going to be there. And he's just trying to get up, and his like glass in his knuckles, and he's against the asphalt, and he's trying to get up. He's super dizzy. And then he doesn't see the knife that comes straight for his back. And Toulouse shows up. The knife is on the ground. There's a crack of dozens of bones and a bunch of people whispering lights out. And he knows exactly who it is. There's a cloud of darkness that basically encapsulates them. And then as he basically is coming to, he sees Toulouse, and she's completely clean. There's no blood on her at all. And you don't know what horrors she just did. But he sees, okay, this is the person I can trust. And she says, you're family. Like, don't let your pride get in the way of things. Take my hand. Let's get out of here. And he's like, okay. And she says that she protects her investments. That's the only reason she was there. And she says that she had regrets about the job because obviously she hired him out to do this extremely dangerous thing. She basically made him late. She basically made him get into this predicament. And so as a result, they're basically working together. And so they go on their way. She gives him a fresh new set of clothing. They give him a bunch of halo to get his body back on, back looking the way it should. And they get there. They got 5 minutes left, and they're at the Grand Capenna Hall. Everything's going great. He's still kind of wobbly, and he sees Toulouse come out. She's got her walking stick, and he's like, "Okay, that cane's really cool. I wish I had a cane like that." And as they're going through, they get there, and there's Obscura and there's Maestros, and they're have this uneasy thing because they're both there because they're two families basically getting married, and they kind of tease each other, Toulouse and Anhelo, because they realize they're on the same side now. Essentially, they're family, like she said, even though they're part of two different crime families. And she says, "Look, I'm sorry. Here's all the stuff you want." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I'm not going to do any of that right now. We're not doing any business right now. I'm here for my daughter's wedding. We can talk about that tomorrow." And he goes, "Enjoy the wedding. And congratulations." He's like, "Thank you. You too." And they go off, and this guy comes up to him. He goes, he's trying to get his attention. He's like, "Okay, boss. And he's like, "Look, you better have a good reason to be talking to me right now. I am here for my wedding, my daughter's wedding. You get away from me." He goes, "Boss, we lost some guys over at the Caldea." He goes, "What did I just say?" And that I have a good reason. It is a good reason. He goes, "Yeah, that's not a good reason. Go find someone else to report you. Tell anyone else." And if it comes down to it, you can even tell Xander that you couldn't reach me because I'm not going to be here. Unless we got goons busting down the doors the next 8 hours, it's me, my family, that's it. Now scram. And the guy's like, okay, I'm out, bye. And he made it. He gets there. He's with his daughter, and his daughter's old, like looking nice and everything. And he goes, and she says, it's really nice. She goes, Daddy, you're here. And he goes, I always will be. And as he's looking at her, he realizes that she looks just like their mom, who obviously she's not with them. And there's just this moment where he's filled with this happiness, and that he knows that he has to be there for his family, no matter what, that on that day and every other day, they are the center of his world. And he says that no work of art could ever compare to them. And just like, it's really cool that like he has this moment where he realizes that's what's important. He sees what mattered. And I'm hoping that that's not just like a sentimentality thing because it's a wedding, but more like a character development that we might actually get to see later on in his story. If for some reason he becomes more important and maybe gets a mythic card the next time around with Capenna, theoretically speaking, not that there's anything going to happen to Xander at all. But yeah, it's just a really fun story. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, travel well.